Today's episode is brought to you by Romer Skincare. Based out of Chicago, Romer launched a work-from-home clean skincare line that covers all of your skin needs. They proved that you don't need a million serums and eye creams to get better skin. Why we love them? Clean ingredients and effective results with just a simple 3-step routine that you and even your partner can share. Right now, Romer Skincare is offering our listeners 15% off and a gift with your first purchase by using code LISTENER15. That's code LISTENER15 on their website, romerskincare.com. No stress, no clutter, just happy skin.
Hello and welcome to the Infectious Groove Podcast, recorded at the 33 1/3 Music Appreciation Center in Speakeasy, located just outside of Detroit, Michigan. The Infectious Groove Podcast is your source for jammy jams, music news, and the best in-depth music discussion. Thanks for joining us. Now here are your hosts.
Hello. My name is Russ. I am your host, and along with me is Michelle and Kyle, as always. Guys, how you doing?
Oh, real good.
We're good. We're good.
So
We're good.
We had ourselves quite a roller coaster of a week last week. Our new episode with the interview with Steve Gorman came out, and blabbermouth.net ran a story on it, and we had an amazing and fantastic day, all day, Monday and Tuesday, until Wolfgang Van Halen made his announcement Tuesday evening, and then it was like, well, all the good stuff that's happening to us kind of doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
So just so everyone knows, the main topic of discussion this week will be the mighty Van Halen. So we're going to walk through kind of the history of the band and talk a little bit about them. And it's kind of funny for me because there are 3 people on the show, and I don't want to name names, but one of us is a gigantic Van Halen fan.
It's me.
And the other two... And the other 2 are not. Yeah, well, you know what? When we get to the main topic, Michelle, why don't you set your wide and various Van Halen knowledge on display for everyone?
Mm-hmm. There was a guy named Edward.
Right. So,
not to be confused with Eddie.
Right. So anybody who might have heard us last week for the first time, welcome back. And if you're looking for ways to interact with us, you can find us on all sorts of different areas. You can go to anchor.fm/Infectious Groove Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at infectious_pod, or you can find us on Facebook or Instagram at Infectious Groove Pod. And then we also have infectiousgroovepodcast.com. So you can just go there and find the links to everything else if you would like to. So a good reason to follow us on social media is because we have some sweet stickers that we're going to be giving away soon. I talked to our art department, Kyle, the other day, and the designs he showed me were sweet. And I kind of put up, like, I don't want to give them away yet, but I put up, like, a teaser of them on Instagram, and they look sweet. And so, once we get them... James Hetfield likes it. Well, I heard that Hetfield saw the designs, and that's what he said.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so...
We sent the proofs to him first.
Was that the actual quote? From the story? Yeah, okay. But when we get the stickers, we are going to give them out to anybody who wants one for free, and you will be able to tell us that you want one and where to send it via our social media. So it's important that you go find us in those areas. So having said that, like I said, our main topic of discussion this week is going to be the mighty Van Halen, but we've got to get a couple of our regular segments out of the way first.
Music news.
So, other than the giant red, white, and black striped elephant in the room, what else went on this week for music news?
You know, I really hate to continue to keep mentioning TikTok because I really dislike TikTok.
No, you don't.
I feel like first of all, hold on, let's back up. Yes, we do.
Yes.
No, you guys watch the same videos that are on TikTok that are on Facebook, and you show them to me, it says TikTok in the corner.
I'm not doing it.
You don't want to download.
I'm not doing a 30-second ad for TikTok. All I'm saying is when I say I don't like TikTok, I for real don't like it. And here's the thing, though. I don't want to be grandpa about it. Like, I get it. Like, this is where the future's going. I get it. Like, back in the day when I had a Walkman, people were like, why are all the kids with the Walkmans? Like, and I get now that, like, you know, people are like, why are all the kids with the TikToks? Like, I get it, you know. But I feel like when you say we're like, I hate to keep reporting it, like, just so you know, we got about 10 more years of that.
Yeah. Not only are they not paying us to talk about them, but I just don't like talking about them in general. But good things have come from them, like the whole Fleetwood Mac thing. Where now Mick Fleetwood himself has, since we talked about this last time, has made a video replicating the original video that happened,
which was hilarious.
It was hilarious. Then personally thanked that guy for the rise in popularity all of a sudden that they have now.
Yeah, and for me and for regular listeners of the show, you probably, when we got to the top of this topic, you were probably like, oh boy, here he goes again. And yes, here I go again. You know what came out of it?
Yeah.
First of all, Fleetwood Mac and the record label were not dicks to this guy and did not have a cease and desist and did not take it down and do the whole thing. And what happened out of it? Where is Dreams on the charts for the first time in 40 years?
Yep.
Numero uno.
Yes.
Like,
Wait, number one?
correct. Thank you for translating that. For those new to the show, Michelle also translates. So, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But what happens when you let people share some of your music and talk about your music is other people find out about your music.
And now everyone
Don
reaps the
Henley.
benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, which, by the way, I got to mention that last week, the most interaction that we got from the episode, I kept getting like tweets and comments and stuff of people being like, holy shit, the Eagles are the Creed of the 70s. Because I totally forgot that I said that. And then people kept, and I was like, yeah, that's right. The Eagles are the Creed of the 70s.
And spaghetti hands.
Oh, yeah. We got a lot of interaction about spaghetti hands. So, yeah. Oh, man, now that's going to be stuck in my head. So, anyways, yeah. So, record labels, I go back to my same notes that I had last week. Stop being dicks.
Yeah.
Let good things
I think that's
happen.
been your note for 30 years.
I was going to say 30 years or so.
Also, Ocean Spray gave that dude a new truck full of Ocean Spray juice.
And the CEO of Ocean Spray did the video.
Yeah, he did a video paying homage.
Which is sweet. And not that all of that isn't cool as hell, but for me, the full takeaway is, hey, if you let us share your music with people and talk it up, we will sell this for you for free.
Right.
You know, I've said this on the show so many times, but I've never come across an industry who doesn't want free publicity more than the music industry.
Yeah, that's true. That's totally true.
And it's just
it makes no sense.
Do you think there's anyone who heard that song or heard about this video and was like, "Oh, that's good. I'm good"? Nope.
No.
Like everybody bought the damn song.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you a whole bunch of people are going to be like, you're going to have older sisters and older brothers and uncles and stuff being like, you should hear the rest of that record
Right,
too.
yeah.
You know, back in my day that came in the mail. You know, like everybody had a copy of Rumors. So anyways, it's been light for music news, other than the biggest subject. So what else has been going on?
Well, there's this gentleman who is a country singer.
Who does one good song?
Who most people don't even know. Actually, speaking of free publicity, him being an idiot has gotten him tons of free publicity.
Yeah.
Because now I'm seeing all these articles that, the title of them are...
You're going to need to narrow it down because there's a lot of people that get free publicity for being idiots.
Sure. The title of an article that I read was, Who in the Fuck is Morgan Wallen?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, now people are looking into who this guy is. And when I originally read the story, or heard about the story, I thought that he was just being an idiot and refusing to acknowledge
me too. That's
protocol.
what I thought when I read it too.
And it turns out he was still being an idiot, but he was down in Texas where you can do whatever you want, and he was.
I thought that was Florida.
Oh yeah, Florida and Texas, you do whatever you want. He was down there partying and hanging out with a bunch of people, kissing a bunch of girls. And then he tried to come on SNL, and they were like, "Nope, not happening."
But then what happened?
Well, this guy, Jack White.
Detroit to the rescue. That's what happened.
He stepped up and was like, hold my guitar.
Yeah, this is going to be so rad. I'm really, really, really looking forward to this. Now, just so everyone knows, we're recording this on Saturday afternoon. So by the time you hear this episode, Jack White's appearance will have happened on SNL. But
maybe.
I'm predicting. Why wouldn't it have happened?
I don't know.
Okay, so anyways.
Can you tell the future?
Yes. I have this thing on my TV where when I click a button, it tells me what's going to happen, and it told me about how Jack White's going to be.
So 90% of the time it actually happens.
Right. So there's a 90% chance that Jack White's going to play on SNL, and it will have already happened. And the great thing is when this episode comes out, people are going to be like, why are they arguing about this? Jack White played on SNL. But my side point is Jack plays now a Wolfgang guitar, which is Eddie Van Halen's line of guitars, and I will be shocked if he doesn't do some sort of nod to Eddie Van Halen during the performance.
My immediate response when me and Michelle were talking about this is, well, how do they know that Jack White's been following protocol? He just doesn't have pictures off the internet of him not following protocol.
Yeah. Well, and I will say I follow Third Man Pressing in their Detroit storefront on Instagram, and all the employees and all the pictures are always masked up and everything. So
they kiss through the masks?
Yes. Wait, are you under the impression you have to make out with somebody to work for Third Man? Why would kissing be the first thing that comes to you?
Because you said that Morgan Whalen was kissing all these girls.
He was kissing
he said that.
He was kissing a bunch of girls. It's true. There's pictures to prove it.
And we don't know who Jack White's been kissing.
But as long as it's through a mask, it's fine.
Yes.
Correct.
Got it.
That's absolutely correct. Anyways, like I say, overall light week for other music news, and we very much plan to address the piece that we left out of the music news segment. So we are going to move right along. Our jammies. Short and sweet for me. This will be no surprise whatsoever, but Mighty Mighty Van Halen. That's
what?
my jammy jams the whole week.
No way.
And you guys know, because we hang out a lot. Like you guys aren't big Van Halen fans, but like there's no shortage of Van Halen in my life. Like I'm always playing Van Halen in regular rotation. But obviously from Tuesday night on, it was just like, well, you know. And then last night we always have people over every Friday to spin records. I have everything Van Halen's ever pressed on vinyl, and we just busted everything out and went through the years, and it's just. I mean, genius stuff. So there's a couple of cuts by the band that I absolutely love that are underrated that I'll be putting on our playlist this week, along with a whole bunch of other Van Halen cuts. But there's a couple of songs that are not on vinyl, like they're from the few things that haven't been pressed on vinyl. So we were just streaming that and whatever, but we were spinning all the other records. So that was for me. Michelle... Holy cow, everybody that tuned in last week to hear our Steve Gorman episode probably said, my life is better because I know what Michelle's been listening to. So, Michelle, for a second week for our new listeners, will you please share your jammy jams?
Well, this week I tried to listen to a little bit more Van Halen than I normally do, which is
so you went from 0 to 30%.
Yes.
Van Halen?
So in between,
and I should say we'll get into it in a bit. Like I get that Van Halen's not for everybody. Like you're not a guitar person. Like you don't like guitar a lot.
You don't know me.
I do know you because every time I've ever tried to play Van Halen for you, I'm like, listen to Eddie's solo here, and you're like, that's noise. So
that's accurate.
Right. So when you listen to a little Van Halen, what was your takeaway though? Other than you're not a guitar person.
The same thing that happened when we did the
album tournament.
That's the one. And I listened to Led Zeppelin, and I was like, I know all these songs. And so just going
especially
through,
the first one.
Yes.
Because I recommended to you guys to at least listen to the first one in 5150.
Yes.
Because I have to assume almost every song on both of those records, you were like, oh, I know this song.
Not so much 5150. I didn't know some of them, but it was like I put on their first one, and I was like, oh my gosh, like every single song. I was like, is this the greatest hits?
10 seconds into Eruption, were you like, is this all guitar?
Next.
Yeah. Damn it.
So in between that, I just had one song other than that stuck in my head all week. It's called Naked by Ella May, and I think I might have mentioned her before, but...
You have mentioned her, but I don't think that song is the
Why
song.
Why are you looking at me like that?
Because it's LMI, I think.
Okay. I pronounce every single artist wrong ever.
Don't worry. Every week it takes me forever to find most of the stuff you guys are talking about on Spotify, so I'll find it.
Last name M-A-I.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for that.
I guess I could be wrong, too, but yeah.
He was just staring daggers at me like, you idiot. Not you.
I don't see what the problem is. So anyways, and the song was called Naked, and is it a new song or
it's an older song, and it's a bonus track on one of her records, and it's just been stuck in my head on
our playlist
replay.
This week is going to be so funky because it's going to be like 300 Van Halen songs and then like 3 or 4 songs from other artists you guys are listening to.
How many songs does Van Halen have?
Oh, a whole lot. They have, at least off the top of my head, they have at least 10 studio records, maybe 11. So there's going to be a lot of Van Halen on this week's.
Oh, dang.
Yep. So those are your jammy jams. And Kyle, what have you been listening to? Did you listen to a little Van Halen?
I did listen to a little Van Halen. Sweet. Yes, a little Van Halen.
That's fine.
But I also received a special little gift in the mail.
Oh boy!
Which was a record that I've been eyeing, and I couldn't pull the trigger on because it was so much over retail.
Because of pricing, yeah.
And it's harder to get.
Who bought this record for you?
It might have been you.
It
could have been a listener.
It definitely was.
Little Hell by City and Color. So when that arrived, I listened to it multiple times.
Right on.
Front to back.
Is it 2 LPs or 1? 2. Because the only City and Color record I have is 2, so I was just wondering.
Yep. And it is... my mind was like blown because this particular record sounds so much different on vinyl than it does digitally.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. I was just texting her the entire time like, oh my God, like I can't believe... Like, did you hear this? Like,
so in a couple of weeks, we're going to have on the show the directors of a documentary called Vinyl Nation that's out now. And I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch it yet, but they sent us a digital screener. And if you get a chance to watch it, it's great. And one of the things in it that they talk about is a lot of quote-unquote quote-unquote vinyl snobs will be like, oh, it sounds better on vinyl. And it's not necessarily that it sounds better. It's just the whole experience is different. Yeah. You know, and even that, like, it can even be a placebo thing where, like, the mix is exactly the same and it does sound the same, but the experience changes it, you know? But I will say I have albums that sound 100% different on vinyl than they do anywhere else.
He literally told me that he thinks he's been hearing it wrong this season, sitting color wrong his entire life.
Which is very, very, very possible.
Yeah.
There's parts of it that, like, sound, like, unfinished, kind of, like, or, like, not as pristine as it does digitally or, like, you know, mastered or whatever. I don't know.
That album has the song that got me into them, which is, I want to say Fragile Bird is the name of it. Yeah. It almost sounds, I swear, people look at me like I'm nuts when I say this, but that song reminds me of Steve Miller. Which, like, the band doesn't at all sound in any way like Steve Miller, but that song reminds me of, like, early 80s Steve Miller.
Like Abracadabra?
Yeah, like that era-ish of Steve Miller. So, anyways, that song and songs from that album.
Oh, yeah, so, I listened to it front to back, mostly to make sure that I wasn't going crazy and I was actually hearing what I was hearing, like, and how great it sounds.
Yeah.
And then I forgot that I had My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West on CD, and I have a CD player in my car, so I switched out, like, I don't know, whatever, Tupac or something I had in there.
Oh, you rocking a CD player?
Oh, yeah. A 6-disc changer, matter of fact.
Compact disc.
So I loaded...
That's that new technology from Sony I heard about.
I loaded that up and listened to that, or been listening to that.
Right on. So, yeah, I will do what I usually do when I pass you the notes, Michelle. Whatever tracks Kyle wants off of these records.
And then I have to stab him.
Right. Not a good idea. So, that was our Jammy Jams, which, again, for people new to the show, every single week we talk about what songs we've been listening to, albums and artists and whatnot. And the highlight, obviously, without argument, is Michelle's Jammy Jams every single week.
People ask me before the show, like, can I know what your Jammy Jam is this week?
Like, absolutely
no,
not.
It's a secret.
Yeah, I get a lot of people that'll pay me, like, over the weekend. You know, they'll be like, hey, just tell me early what her Jammy Jams are, because of the line in Vegas. Like, people bet on what your Jammy Jams are going to be. And I'm always just like, no, I can't. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to be Pete Rose about it. You know?
Yeah, we're in a soundproof room in the basement.
Because one day we're going to go in the Podcasting Hall of Fame, and I don't want to be like Pete Rose and not be able to get in over it. So, you know what I'm saying. So, moving right along.
It's time for the Infectious Groove Podcast. Main topic of discussion.
So we left this out of music news because the three of us decided the other day. Well, I think I decided, and you two went along with it, to make the.
I feel like that's the majority of my life.
I decided, and you go along with it. Sure. We decided that it's we've done now and again we've done episodes where we kind of do like an artist spotlight. We have more coming up. We're going to do one soon, actually, with a gentleman from the UK about Tom Petty and whatnot. So we've done episodes like that before, and I think instead of just making a really long music news segment where essentially I just talk about Van Halen for 15 minutes. I thought
now you're going to talk about it for an hour.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about it for an hour. The thing with Edward Van Halen is whether or not you like guitar, I mean, the guy's universal and has influenced everyone. Like, everyone who you like picked up a guitar directly or indirectly because of Edward Van Halen. By that, I mean that if the guys in my chem didn't grow up Van Halen fans, like their uncle did, and they heard Van Halen, and then they were like, I want to be a rock star too. And it's all directly linked to Eddie Van Halen. The influence the band had is almost, it's unquantifiable. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, it's just to think of the fact that, like, there's a million bands who started just because of this one guy and his innovation. You know, it's just stunning. And there's so many things to learn from Eddie Van Halen, too. Like, one thing that nobody knows is, or a lot of people don't know, is he was never trained. He never took guitar lessons. And a lot of his innovation...
Ferris Bueller's
They're trying to do Ferris Bueller. Yeah.
Never took one lesson.
Never had one lesson. But unlike Ferris Bueller on the clarinet, unlike Ferris Bueller on the clarinet, what Eddie did, though, a lot of what Eddie did, people looked at as earth-shaking and innovative, and it's because he didn't have anybody telling him what the rules were.
Yeah, see, that's...
No one told him what to do.
No one told him what to do. You had to have... There's nobody going... Well, you can't do that exactly. Like, you have to strum or pick this way. And so he was like, well, what if I just use my fingers up here? Now, I want to be clear, because everybody is on the internet fights about this. I'm not claiming Eddie Van Halen invented finger tapping, but what I'm saying is that he took it to an entirely different level that it had never been at before. And he also wasn't a one-trick pony. Eddie Van Halen wasn't just the tapping guy. You know, he did tons of different types of things with inverted chords and just the way that he played things, and even his guitar itself. himself the Frankenstein, which I'm sure you guys have at least seen that, the red, black, and white striped guitar.
Yes.
He built that from scratch and made, like, there's all sorts of things in there. Like, he didn't know how to wire a guitar, so he accidentally left out the tone knob. He accidentally left out the tone knob when he wired it. So he was just like, well, if I turn the volume way up, that's better tone. So like, like now my volume knob has become my tone knob, and things like that. And just little things like that where if if you're a kid and you go buy a $1,500 perfectly pristine guitar and then you go take guitar lessons, like none of this happens.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for breaking or not following rules when it comes to art stuff.
Well, Ed's your guy.
Yeah, I am all about. You can go to art school and you can learn about. Or you can go to school to play guitar and you can learn about the history of guitar and that whole 9 yards. But it's up to you to then bend and break the rules to discover new things about what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And he absolutely did that.
Yeah, and in doing so, launched a million other careers. Unfortunately, Edward Van Halen did leave us at 65 years old, which, I know we joke about it constantly on the show. Michelle always says, that's young, no matter how young somebody was. But that is young. That's young. The news was brought to us by his son, Wolfgang Van Halen, who is insanely talented. This kid is insane. And it's not just an apple fall far from the tree.
Words are hard today.
But it's a thing where Wolfgang did the same thing that his dad did, just applied himself until he mastered tons of different things.
Do you think he just threw a guitar at his kid and was just like, figure it out? Probably. And
he got to watch his dad all the time, though.
Yeah. Well, and it's it's like Michael Jackson grew up in a Motown studio. It's like by the time you get to producing Thriller, you're going to be good at it because you just got done watching Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye for 10 years in the studio and the Supremes and so on. But Wolfgang does have a solo record coming out next year where I've read a couple of things about it, and if I read everything right, he plays damn near everything on it. And there's guest solos where there was some talk that his father had done at least one solo, so that'll probably be the first posthumous release we hear from Edward. And then I believe Mark Tremonti played a solo on it and whatnot, but I think Wolf is playing the guitar and the bass and the drums and everything, and it's everyone who said Nuno Betancourt from Extreme heard it and said it's just stunning. So who knows, maybe through Wolfgang we'll start to see the return of big rock again.
Maybe.
I would love that. But anyways, to talk a little bit about my personal history with Van Halen, and I think some of this will come off as at least a little bit funny, is the first time I ever heard Van Halen was when Thriller came out in 1982. And I was 7, so I wasn't familiar with Van Halen at all, So Edward Van Halen playing on the Beat It solo was the first time I ever even heard this guy play guitar. And he didn't matter to me at all because to me it was like, oh, this guy's so cool. He got to play on Michael Jackson's record. You know what I mean? Not like, oh, Michael Jackson's so cool. He got Edward Van Halen. To me, I was like, oh, look at this. So the story gets a little bit funnier, too, when a year and a half later, Van Halen put out 1984. And we went to Kmart and my brother bought the album. And then in the car on the way home, he showed me a picture of Edward Van Halen on the back, and he was like, this is the guy that played the solo on Beat It. And I swear to God, I was like, oh, he's got his own band now? Well, that's good for him.
Moving on up.
He's play on Thriller, and, boom, you got your own band. So you're never going to believe this, but my older brother was real quick to correct me that this was, in fact, not Edward Van Halen.
Was it with a backhand?
Yeah.
A backhand?
No, he wasn't allowed to hit me in front of my mom.
Well, she was driving, so.
Right. So she would have pulled over to hit him. So I went back from there to learn about the history of Van Halen, and pretty much like anybody else, when you drop the needle on Van Halen 1 for the first time and Running with the Devil starts, it's one thing. And then when the second track on their debut record is a 1.5-minute guitar solo, you're just like, what? And I was just blown away. So
I might have skipped a little bit.
Right,
Did you really skip Eruption?
Probably.
I mean, I might have fast-forwarded a little bit.
Holy crap. Fun fact about Eruption, though, is it wasn't a pre-planned thing. He was just warming up in the studio, and they were like, well, that's amazing. And then it ended up on the record.
Then he erupted.
Oh, cool.
So, to go back to the very beginning of Van Halen, and this is very Cliff Notes version, but they were playing around L.A. forever, and they played a show one night, and in the crowd happened to be Gene Simmons, who was like, well, this band rules. So he got Van Halen a record deal.
He had money on his mind.
So,
like usual.
Yeah. This is going to be a very good
Very lucrative.
For music as well as my pocketbook.
What year
My
did
Gene
they-
Simmons isn't great yet, but it's getting there. I just know that was a pretty accurate Gene Simmons.
I only know it from what was the name of his reality show?
Who cares? Go on.
I don't even.
So Gene finds Van Halen, gets him signed.
Oh, I asked what year their first record came out.
1978, March of 1978.
Okay.
And so between March of 78 and I think 1984 came out in December of 83. I didn't put that in my notes, but I think so. But between that time, they put out 6 total records with Dave. I personally don't count Diver Down as a full record because it's like 35 minutes long and it's mostly covers. But, it
Why doesn't
counts.
it count?
I mean, first of all, it's 35 minutes long, instead of the average record is. The average record would be like at least 10 minutes longer back then. The average album now is like 78 minutes
Below
long.
average is fine.
Right, right. But then the whole thing where it's like mostly covers, and they're great covers. They do Dancing in the Street on there. Pretty Woman is from there. I don't know if you've ever heard Van Halen's version of Pretty
I
Woman,
was
but
like,
that's
I
on
don't know
there.
if you ever heard Pretty Woman.
But
Yup.
there's a lot of stuff on there that I think people don't know are covers, like Where Have All the Good Times Gone and stuff like that that are covers, and I don't think people know that. But then they cover Happy Trails at near the end of the record and stuff like that. So it's a fun record. It's just, to me, it's like they tried really hard for a while and then they were like, here's a short album with some covers, and then they
Give me more money.
And then they came out of that into 1984, which is hands down the record that broke them like all over the world. Jump, Panama, Hot for Teacher. I mean, Top Jimmy, Drop Dead Legs. I mean, the record is monster. And they went on easily their biggest tour by far. I mean, every stop on the tour was stadiums and all that. And then their lead singer quit directly after.
Why?
After that. Well, that's one of those things where now, if you go back and you look at it now, it's like both sides have changed. Like Dave at the time was like, no, they fired me. And then he changed the story later to, no, I quit. And the Van Halen brothers were like, no, we fired him. No, we quit. Or, or he quit. So it's changed over time. The short version is, or the thing that I believe the most is that Dave didn't like at all them going toward the synth sound. Like he was like, our brand is a rock guitar god.
Right.
And the Van Halen brothers very much were like, okay, but Dave's ego got out of control and he decided he was the star of the show. And if you know anything about David Lee Roth, that's pretty believable.
Yeah, I was going to say, that sounds accurate.
Yeah, so I would imagine it was probably a little bit of both.
Yeah.
He was probably way overactive with his ego. And then on top of that, probably didn't express his opinions that constructively as far as the direction of the band was going. Plus, he like Van Halen, when they were coming up, Dave got on the cover of Rolling Stone, not Van Halen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and we've talked about this before. You got the lawyers and the girlfriends and everybody probably all telling him you're the star of this bit. And it just literally, like, it's one of those things. When I was a kid, I got massively into Van Halen because of that 1984 record. And I'm just like, well, this is now my favorite thing of all time. Never mind, it's over. I was just like, well, how about that? So it was, for me, I was just like, well, this is, obviously, and the world very famously took David Lee Roth's side at the time. Like, everybody was just like, there's just no, like, because nobody ever replaced their lead singer and had any success.
Yeah, that's true.
Ever.
Right.
And so the whole world was like, oh, Van Halen, you can do whatever you want to, but, like, Dave's going to kill this. Like, the whole world literally was like, Dave is the show. And they just were, everybody expected Dave to just become the huge thing on his own. And
how'd that go?
Well, not so much. And so, me personally, I think the very biggest mistake David Lee Roth did was the first thing that he did after he left Van Halen was repeat the Diver Down thing. He released an EP, and that's all covers. Or California Girls was the lead single, and it's a decent cover of it.
Yeah.
But if you're coming off of the creative output like 1984, and that's what brought most of the world to the dance, and then your first thing out of the gate is a cover of, at the time, a 20-year-old Beach Boys song that's almost identical to the original anyways.
Right.
Except Dave going, wow! Every 30 seconds or so.
Scissor kicking everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if you've ever seen the video, but holy cow. So that, I think David Lee Roth kind of, in out of the gate, he had decent album sales. The first 3 records that he put out after he left Van Halen sold over 1 million each. But over time, and we'll get into it in the second half, but Van Halen just overtook him by a country mile. And then there's at least 2 times where David Lee Roth re-enters the Van Halen picture later on.
How'd that go?
Oh, not good a couple of times. And surprisingly, it went very, very well the last time. So I have an opinion that Eddie kind of resigned himself to just like, okay, this is just going to happen. Like, Dave's just going to be Dave, and we're going to do this. And I think that's what ended up keeping as much peace as there was near the end.
Right.
So, anyways, having said that, that's a little bit about the beginnings of Van Halen. But if you thought any of that wasn't straightforward, holy cow. Everything that happens with Van Halen from here is just confusing as hell.
I thought for sure that your original story about how you got into them was going to involve your mom beating somebody up. And I was going to be like, yes!
Yeah, no, I don't. I want to say I don't think she ever had an adverse interaction with anybody over Van Halen. Just about every other artist ever. Like the day that Robert Palmer passed away, and I said, "Oh, that's too bad. Robert Palmer died." My mom said, "Good." And I said, "What? Excuse me?" And then I come to find out that he said something bad about Elvis in an interview once, and my mom never let it go, and then didn't exactly celebrate, but wasn't heartbroken when Robert Palmer died.
Sounds about right.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that sounds like her.
Yep.
So give us just a second here. We're going to pay some bills, and then we will be back to talk about the kind of stable future of Van Halen, and then the really unstable future of Van Halen. We'll be back in a second.
Hey ladies, come listen with me, Mixie Plum, as wonderful women I know, or even just met, share their soulful stories and experiences for them and us to all learn and heal together. But in my own riot girl kind of way, you know, explicitly, confidently, and loud. We all want to speak, we all want to be heard, we all want to be understood. Roar more with me and open your lady mouth. Disclaimer, lady mouth is also for dudes, too.
Hello, I am Christy.
And I'm Leighton.
And together we are a new podcast on whiskey tasting called
Married Mash, where we discuss life, family, and pretty much anything.
Yep, and Leighton brings a new whiskey for me to try. Will we clink it?
Or will we sink it?
Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And remember,
always drink responsibly.
Indeed.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Zach.
It's Josh. Zach, do you enjoy video games, drinking, and attempting to solve the world's problems through ridiculous schemes?
Yeah.
Do you think others would enjoy that?
I mean, I really hope so.
So do I. So I think you all should come spend some time with us, the Midwest Meltdown. This show was created by these two fine gentlemen here, myself and Zach, when we spent the last 14 years telling each other funny stories, talking about video games, and literally anything else that comes to mind. We wanted to turn our passion for gaming into something that we could share with everyone. So again, follow us, the Midwest Meltdown, anywhere you can find your podcasts. That's Spotify, Apple Music, Podbean, Google Pods. Check us out.
Welcome back. We are discussing more or less the history of Van Halen and the hows and whys as to what kept Eddie in the consciousness of the forefront of music fans all these years. And we, during the first half, took you kind of up through David Lee Roth splitting from the band right in the middle of their highest success and trying to take off in what he and really the music press thought he was going to be the one to win the war. And I talked to you guys a little bit about why I think that he started to fail then, and I think one of the big things is not only did Van Halen hire Sammy Hagar, who, by the way, I was not even remotely a fan of before. I said the same thing about I Can't Drive 55 in 1984 that I say today, which is, God damn it, stop playing that song. I hate it. And I know he was in Montrose and everything. I'm not disregarding his entire previous career, but when they announced that they hired Sammy Hagar, I wasn't like, oh, hooray. You know, right. I was just like, we'll see how this goes. But what Van Halen did different than David David Lee Roth is they put their nose to the grindstone, and they worked really, really hard on putting together a fantastic record to come out swinging with. Whereas Dave was like, "But what if I just do California Girls?" You know what I mean? Like
over here, bright shiny things.
Which, by the way, you kind of can't argue with Dave's line of thinking, because Edward Van Halen and David Lee Roth very famously got into damn near a fist fight, or probably was a fist fight, over the covers situation, because there was always at least one cover on every Van Halen record. And Eddie was like, we're four talented guys who can write music. At the time, they had Unchained, Mean Street, So This Is Love, Beautiful Girls. Like, they had a line of their own hits. And so Eddie was like, why are we doing all these covers? And Dave was like, because the work's already done.
Yeah.
Like, it's already popular. Like, people will hear it and be like, oh, I love that song. And then they'll just buy your version.
Right.
So that's what he did out of the gate, was like, well, people love the Beach Boys. People love California Girls. Let's do that.
Well, they don't like Pet Sounds, though.
Well, no, everyone does but you. I heard we have a sticker coming that refers to that in some way, shape, or form. So
that everyone hates the Beach Boys?
Right.
Yes.
So what Van Halen did was they will put out an inarguable masterpiece. 5150 is brilliant from start to finish, and it does everything that Van Halen did right up till that time. There's a bunch of synth, there's a ton of guitar, there's great ballads, there's really good melodies, and then you have Sammy coming to the table writing completely serious lyrics as opposed to what Dave was doing. And I actually heard David Lee Roth had a quote one time about the difference between David Lee Roth, Van Halen, and Sammy Hagar Van Halen, and he's like, all you need to know is, I told you on the first record I ain't talking about love, and then Sammy told you on his first record, why can't this be love? And he's like, that's really all you need to know between the two eras. And it's very, very, very true. Now, there's a ton of people who grew up on Roth Van Halen, and they were just like, nope, I'm not having it. People use Van Hagar as a derogatory term.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
That doesn't even make any sense.
That's a badge of honor, in my opinion. I grew up on that. I loved that early Van Halen, but the serious direction they took with Sammy was great for me, because at the time I was like getting older and starting to think about more serious things and whatnot. And for me, there's only so many times you can hear like, beer and women, which is like what the first 6 Van Halen records is. It's like variants of, hey, beer and women. And then Sammy comes in.
That's not okay.
Well, it's not that it's not okay. It's just you can only do that so many times.
Everyone loves titties and beer.
I'm sorry, a little louder, please.
Everyone loves titties and beer.
Okay. And I can't argue with that.
Yeah, me either.
So with Sammy, they then kept just reaching new heights, man. Like 5150 came out of the gate and sold unbelievably. OU812 after that came out and sold unbelievably. For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, same thing. Balance. The 4 records they did with Sammy in the studio, I mean, they were on top of the world. Like, they kept selling more than the one before it. And when I was a kid, like when those records were all coming out, it was always like, hey, did you get the new Van Halen album? Van Halen doesn't exist anymore. Okay, well, it does, and I'm holding the record right now. And I've always been that way with like Pink Floyd. Like, people my whole life have been like, you have to choose between Roger and David. No, I don't. No, I don't. And you can't force me to. Like, I like all the Floyd they did with.
No one can tell you what to do.
Well, no, hold on. That's your motto. The older I get, the more I'm accustomed to people telling me what to do. Like, we've talked about this. Yeah. You probably tell me more what to do than anybody else. And it's
okay.
Yeah. How do I sound?
Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, regular listeners of the show are probably like, wow, that was a stunning Russ impression.
It's like Eeyore.
I thought there was 2 of them for a minute. And so that's how I was. I wasn't like, oh, I can't listen to this, because, it's a different singer or whatever else. And plus, and I always feel this way about GNR too, whether or not Slash quit or was fired or whatever else, like, he's not there either way. You know what I mean? So, like, what is Van Halen supposed to do? Just be like, oh, well, we don't get to be a band anymore because Dave wants to sing California Girls.
We talked about this before, but I think that's like an older time thing where, like, no one gives a shit who's in what band now.
Yeah.
Like, no one cares at all.
People care, but they're not.
Do you care,
it.
besides the lead singer, do you care who's in My Chemical Romance?
Yes.
Nope.
You don't even know any of the other members of My Chemical Romance.
You don't.
I can name 2.
So, I'm not saying everybody should be like me, and I try. Over the years, I've backed down from being that guy where I go, oh, you love Van Halen? Name 4 albums. Like, I used to be that guy.
Not even songs, whole albums.
Yeah, and I've backed down from that, but at the same time, like, if you name a band right now, I can probably tell you all the members of it. I'm sorry, from like 1999 and before.
Say My Chemical Romance.
If you I would challenge our listeners, if anybody without Googling it can tell me the name of anybody in Matchbox 20 outside of Rob Thomas, Godspeed.
Yeah. There's more people than Rob Thomas.
Supposedly there's 4 other guys. And like I can tell you the names of everybody who's been in Metallica. Like they've had 3 bass players. I can tell you all the other 3 guys and the 3 bass players that they've had.
Is that because you like Metallica more than you like Matchbox 20?
No, it's a matter of there used to be personalities in bands.
It used to be a big deal. Now that's just interchangeable people that just.
Yeah. Well, you and I were talking during the break while somebody was having piddle time about the Killers. Like,
you don't put my personal business on the onlines.
Yeah, it just happened. So you have like the Killers. Somewhere along the line, the Killers just became Brandon Flowers and sometimes the Porn Stash drummer guy.
Yeah.
And no one cares. No one cares. They're just like, oh, whatever. That's some people.
They just accept it as what it is. Yeah.
And with Van Halen, people were like mad, like straight. I'm like, there's people probably listening to this episode right now who, before we started on this tirade, were probably like, no, not listening to the rest of this because they're going to talk about Van Hagar, And I also don't think that there's anything wrong with being passionate about that either. Like if you're a Roger Waters guy or a Slash guy or a David Lee Roth guy, like that's cool too. But I think that people now look back on the Hagar era and even the most staunch David Lee Roth guy, when no one else is around, that dude's listening to 5150. And he's like, this is a great record, But they had so many cool songs and they took a lot more risks. Like I think probably the riskiest Van Halen record that there is OU812 because they had all that success on 5150 and then they came out with OU812 and there's some synth ballads on it and there's some rockin' songs, but it's like real experimental type thing, and I think that's cool that they were still doing that.
Yeah.
They still had the drive to do that. Then in 1995, they put out their last album with Sammy Hagar, which is called Balance, and I think that record is insanely underrated. It's really hard rocking, and Sammy, like I said, was always writing those deeper lyrics, and he was going through a very, very messy divorce at the time, and it's all on the record. Plus, the lead single off of that album was a song called Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do that I've always loved. It's the riff on it is insane. The solo's insane. Sammy's singing is insane. But just recently, I had that song reinvented to me because Sammy Hagar, for the first time ever, talked about what it was written about. And it was written about when Kurt Cobain passed away. And the whole thing is when someone's in that frame of mind of depression, that how other people on the outside looking in are like, oh, it'll get better, oh, don't worry, you have people that love you. And the song Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do, the whole song is like, if I've made up my mind, then this is the way that this is going to happen. And now retroactively listening to the lyrics, every lyric that passes, I'm like, holy, that's obviously about that, but for 20 some years I had no idea what the song was about, and then when Sammy revealed that recently, I was just like, that was insane.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Totally reinvented the song.
Who sings my least favorite Van Halen song?
What is? Oh, Stay Frosty.
Yeah, I was just
Stay Frosty is. I'm putting that on the playlist. Damn it. Oh wow! How did you like Ice Cream Man on the first record? Because it's damn near the same song.
I did not.
I'll tell you what. We saw Van Halen in 2012, and Dave got the acoustic out so like the whole crowd knows Ice Cream Man's coming, and then he told a story about his dogs for like 20 minutes while he was,
and then played Stay Frosty,
and then played Ice Cream Man. But anyways,
wait, you didn't answer my question.
Oh, what? Dave,
sings? Oh, okay.
We're getting there. Well, I'll get to the Different Kind of Truth era. It's from your favorite Van Halen album, A Different Kind of Truth.
Is that the one with tattoo on it?
Yes, which is the jam. Yeah, you should hear the lyrics of that song because the lyrics are very good for someone who's in the tattoo industry. Yeah, it's a fantastic song. I kid you not. In about I don't know how the time's going to break down in this, but in about 10 minutes, I'm going to talk about what a great album that is, and you're not helping that.
I mean, okay, you told me to be lively and ask questions, and I'm getting shit on.
I would imagine your next question is going to be, why was Balance their last album with Sammy Hagar?
Yeah.
That was
100% my next question.
And you're never going to believe this, but it's another thing where the Van Halen brothers say one thing, Sammy says another, and the truth is obviously somewhere in the middle. From everything I've put together, Sammy owed his record label some solo songs for a box set that they were going to put out, and Ed was very much like, no, you're not solo. Like you're part of Van Halen. Like no one else is putting out box sets of their solo stuff. And Sammy at the time had just went through that divorce. Things were not moving along as creative and everything wasn't as fun as it used to be. So there was just kind of a line in the sand where Sammy was like, why don't I just go back to being solo then? Like, why don't we had a bunch of success, and why don't we be done here?
We're done here.
But then it became very ugly in the press very quick.
Sounds like he just took his toys and went home.
Well, that's Ed's side of it, yeah. And Sammy's side is like, okay, but also the last 5 or 6 years have sucked. And, you know, if I'm going to be treated like crap in addition to all of this not being fun, then it's definitely not worth it and whatever. So in any case, Sammy finally left Van Halen in 1995. And then, okay, here's where things get super confusing and roller coasting.
Do I need a dry erase board?
You are going to need a chalkboard for this, for sure. So in late 1995, early 96, Van Halen put out, I have a poster for it right here, the Best of Van Halen Volume 1.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the big thing on this record was the last 2 songs here, Me, Wise Magic and Can't Get This Stuff No More, had the return of David Lee Roth on vocals. And the entire world, including myself, had to get a change of underwear and was like, excuse me, what? David Lee Roth is back in Van Halen and these 2 songs kick 10 kinds of ass? Holy shit, all is right in the world again, right? Then Van Halen showed up on the VMAs in 1996, and everybody thought they were there, including David Lee Roth, to announce that David Lee Roth had returned to the band. They were not there to announce that. They were there to give out the best male video, and David Lee Roth hijacked the whole thing to basically go on about how great he is and how he was back in Van Halen. And I'll show you guys the clip after we're done recording. If anybody's seen this, it's the most awkward body language you've ever seen. Like, Edward Van Halen literally keeps moving, like, further away from the podium. And he just
Is he panic moonwalk
He
away?
keeps face palming. There's a part where he physically moves David Lee Roth, like, away from the microphone and is like, would just stop. Basically, they got backstage to the press, and Roth was like, I'm back in the band. And literally, the 2 Van Halen brothers were like, no, he's not.
Is that from the same show where I showed you that clip and he's just completely hammered and has no idea what's going on?
Yeah, well, where his jeans are. He's wearing his mom jeans in it. Yeah. And, so all of us. Now, to the untrained Van Halen fan, you're just like, oh, well, that's Dave Man Dave. You know, like, and they got the 2 new songs, like, This Kicks Ass, you know, and the Van Halen brothers were like, no, we just spent 10 years correcting the mistakes of Dave, you know, and trying to be more serious and whatever. And here he comes back, jazz hands all over the place. And they were not having it. So what they did then was they made an announcement being like, David Lee Roth thinks he's back in Van Halen. He's not.
How embarrassing.
Yeah. And so then what they did was they went, the next move from Van Halen looks perfect on paper and then was not. So they went and hired Gary Cherone from Extreme, who is a brilliant performer. He's everything Dave could be as far as a front man and everything Sammy was as a front man. And he's got the vocal range to cover both. Like when David Lee Roth, when David Lee Roth eventually returned to Van Halen full time, he couldn't sing. He doesn't have the vocal range to cover anything Sammy did. And also his ego wouldn't let him either. Like, you're not going to catch David Lee Roth singing Dreams because he's like, I didn't write that. You know, wow. You know.
Is that how he talks?
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever seen an interview with him?
I'm going to show you an interview here in a second when we're done. And I will pull up a random David Lee Roth interview and you'll be like, what? That is how he talks. But and so Cherone could sing as low as Dave and could sing as high as Sammy, had unlimited charisma. And they put out a brilliant first single. The song's called Without You. It's been one of my jammy jams before. Like, it's just a monster song. And the whole rest of the record is, oh, you should have waited. Like, you should have baked that a little bit longer. It's just not a very good album. And hindsight's 2020. Almost everybody in the music critic world says that Van Halen should have toured with Cherone to get to know him first, so they could work more as a cohesive band, then write. What Van Halen was trying to do was rewrite history. When they got together with Sammy, the chemistry was there, and they knocked out these amazing songs. Right. And they were trying to do that again with Van Halen. The album was called Van Halen 3. And they were trying to do that again with Cherone, and it just didn't. Like, Without You, I would put that up against any classic Van Halen song, and then the rest of the record I'd rather not discuss. You know?
Is that one of the records that you put on that one song, and then that's it?
Oh, for sure. For sure. And it's unfortunate, because, like I say, on paper, Gary Cherone joining Van Halen, yes. All day, every day, and twice on Sunday. And then in practice, it just didn't. Yeah. So that happened. Then they, after that, they only did the one album and one tour. It's like I think they toured a couple of years with Sharon, but it was very clear that this wasn't.
And he did both Sammy and David Lee Roth's music.
Yeah, and he did a ton of stuff that Sammy never did of Dave. Like Sammy would pretty much do like Ain't Talking About Love and Jump.
Yeah,
during his, because in Sammy's defense, they had a million hits with Sammy, so it wasn't like they would shorten the show.
I feel like a million's a little high.
Well, they had a million.
Okay,
they had a million hits with Sammy, and with Sharon, he was doing stuff like Unchained and Mean Streets and stuff Van Halen fans hadn't heard live in a decade and a half. So that was really cool for fans. Like we went and saw him with him, and he was amazing, And then they did Without You, and we all were excited. And then they did Fire in the Hole, the other single, and we all went and got a beer. Then from there out, the history of the band is really, really, really rocky. There was another hits package that was released soon after called The Best of Both Worlds, which was like really unnecessary. It was, most of the songs that were already on the best of, and then they just kind of added to it. And then there were 2 like throwaway songs that were recorded with Sammy. And then soon after that, they were like, oh, we got back together with Sammy. And like, no, we're not going to put out an album. We're going to tour. So like the epitome of this is for the money. And it's really unfortunate for me because I got to see Van Halen 8 times total between 1991 and the last time I saw them in 2014. I saw them in 2004 on that tour. And actually the concert date fell on my buddy's birthday. So I bought him tickets and I was like, hey, I'll take you to see Van Halen for your birthday. And then the whole show was just not good.
Oh, that sucks.
And it was such a bummer. Yeah. They did do the song Humans Being that night, which I love. It's a Van Halen song. It's not on any Van Halen album. It's only on the Twister soundtrack.
Wait, you put that on a playlist before?
Yeah.
Go on.
What does that have to do with that not being on it?
And?
Yeah, I sure did.
Because I wrote Human Beings like 20 times. I'm like, this is not a song.
Yeah, it's Humans Being.
Yep, got it.
That's what makes us humans being, is how the chorus goes. And so they did that song that night, which was great for me. But other than that, it was like you could see like Eddie and Sammy, if they were like running toward each other on stage, they would like get within 3 feet and then like stop and make sure they didn't come any closer and like walk around. You could just tell that this was for the money. And Eddie himself was probably in the worst shape I've ever seen him publicly. He was just not in good health and not really, really battling very publicly with alcohol. Like if you go on YouTube and you type in Van Halen 2004, you'll be real sad you did. After, this is a guy who was impeccable and perfect on everything, and it sounds like a Van Halen cover band guy tried to play for him. On any given show, and it's
good.
Yeah. And however, I will say, and we'll get into this again with more of the history of the band, but Eddie really took an upswing, started to take care of himself, and just the last several tours ended on huge high notes. He was just perfect every night, and really looked like he was enjoying himself and having fun. The total opposite of what that one. So I want to be clear: out of 8 shows, I'll take one bad one.
Yeah.
So with Roth, they got back together in 2006, and they promised up front, after all of this stuff, they're like, okay, we're going to get back together with David Lee Roth. Like, we're actually going to do it this time. And they made the announcement, all 4 of them, not just Dave, deciding that this was true. So they got back together and made this announcement, and they did say that, like, we're going to tour first and see how that goes, but we do intend to put out a record. And to be totally honest, at the time, Detroit was like the 6th date on the tour, and I was like, just make it to 6 dates. Just make it to 6 dates. Just make it to 6, because I'd never seen him with Dave. That's all I wanted, was for them to make it to 6 dates. And then, like, right now, I'm wearing my tour shirt from 2012, so they made it to more than 6 dates. Yeah, and it went fantastic. Dave's being Dave. It's a whole lot of I live my life like wow, and you're like, but there was more words to that sentence, But Eddie was on fire. The big controversy from that era was that when the camps split between Sammy and Van Halen, Michael Anthony, the longtime bass player for Van Halen, very famously kind of sided with Sammy. Ooh. And because Van Halen wasn't really doing anything, he would play on Sammy's solo shows and solo tours and whatnot. And pretty much for the Van Halen brothers, it was like, okay, you've chosen your side, and you're dead to us now. Luckily, Eddie Van Halen was so magical that he created the replacement bass player for Van Halen and just hired his son. So now you have Van Halen, which was Michael Anthony, Alex Van Halen, Edward Van Halen, and David Lee Roth, and then those three plus Sammy Hagar now becomes Edward Van Halen, Alex Van Halen, Wolfgang Van Halen, and David Lee Roth.
Should have renamed the band Seed of Halen.
And, you know, a lot of music fans, Van Halen fans, don't like how that went down. Michael Anthony being out and Ed hiring his kid.
That guy chose his fate, man.
Yeah, you can, like anything, you can argue both sides of it. For me personally, Wolfgang is amazing on the bass, and he carried the harmonies just fine. Which Michael Anthony really brought those signature Van Halen harmonies to it. I'm not saying he was any better than Michael Anthony. I'm just saying when I saw them in concert, the harmonies were there, and he did a great job. And that was really the only thing of that tour that anybody had any complaints about or anything, and people would just, it's not really Van Halen because Michael Anthony's not there. Well, you know, it is what it is. What you want this or nothing? You know what I mean? Yeah, you would want nothing. So that tour went on very successfully for years. I'm sure there was plenty of backstage drama, but we didn't hear anything about it. It was all handled very professionally. Ed looked like he was having a great time on stage. Dave definitely was looking like he had a great time. I have a friend of mine who had a great quote about David Lee Roth one time, and that's, David Lee Roth is there to entertain himself first, and then maybe you. And David was very much entertaining himself on that tour.
Awesome.
Yeah. I literally think that he's the reason why I'm not a huge Van Halen fan, because as entertaining as he is, like being like that, like it annoys me so badly.
Yeah.
And I cannot get over him being like that.
I feel like you and Edward share an opinion of David Lee Roth. I would imagine that if you were to ask Ed, even in the last couple of months of his life, like, you know, like when people really start to, you know, like him and Sammy got reconciled and whatnot, Edward and Sammy did. And if you were to be like, you know, what's your real feelings on David Lee Roth, he would have probably said exactly what you just said. Like, I want to like him.
Yeah, like he seems ridiculous and funny and likable, but I can't imagine working with that guy on a regular basis because, oh my god,
he's on 100 all the time. 100's his starting point, and then goes up to 1,000.
I think there's medication for that.
Well, when we're done, when I'm transferring the files here, I'm going to bring up some random David Lee Roth stuff, and you're not going to believe it's real. Trust me. So what they did that tour for a while. Then they put out what I believe is one of the best Van Halen records that there is, A Different Kind of Truth. Like, I personally, we talked about this with Tom Petty before, where I feel like if Tom Petty would have known that Hypnotic Eye was going to be his last album, he would have been like, okay, good enough. You know, like it's a fantastic record. If Edward Van Halen in 2012 would have known that A Different Kind of Truth was going to be his last album, I have no doubt in my mind he would have been like, sweet, what a way to go out. Again, a lot of people are like, yeah, but Michael Anthony's not singing the harmonies and he's not playing the bass. Well, I'm here to tell you, Wolfgang plays his ass off on that record. He's doing on bass what his dad does on lead. Like, it's just monstrous. Monster bass playing. So I love the record. I don't think there's a bad song on it. They reached into their archives too and went back to a lot of songs that they had written in the early days but never released, and they worked them out to where they like kind of fleshed them out, and they were like, that was a good song. Why didn't we finish that? You know, and then when they went on that tour, Van Halen fans were treated even more in-depth stuff that they never got to hear before, because Eddie let Wolfgang write the set list. So instead of Eddie sitting down going, well, we got to do Running with the Devil, we got to do I'm the One, we got to do Jump, we got to do Ain't Talking About Love, he literally was like, Wolf, write the set list. And so Eddie literally looked at Wolf and was like, why are we doing Hear About It Later? And Wolfgang was like, because that song kicks 10 kinds of ass and you guys haven't played it in for damn ever. And so like people like me go to the show and they start playing Hear About It Later, and I'm like, what? You know, and then it come to find out, so the Van Halen fans that want to be all mad at Wolf, like, Wolf's always been on the side of the fans.
Right.
You know, like, he's not sitting back being like, hooray, I'm old enough to take over for that idiot Michael Anthony. You know, like, it just is what it is. And I love knowing that he was like, yeah, we're going to... Roger Waters did a very similar thing on the last Roger Waters tour, where his son was playing keyboards and he let his kid pick out songs that they would do, and he picked out Floyd songs that Roger or Dave or anybody associated with Floyd haven't done in forever. And because they're, you know, it's their dad, but they also grew up a fan too.
Right.
You know, so they're getting to play the stuff that no one's ever heard. Right. You know, so just a couple of notes I wanted to personally make about Van Halen that I think that you guys, whether or not you're fans of the band or Eddie personally, I think you would agree with. One we already touched on is the whole The fact that the guy never took lessons. You know, he didn't have the rule book, and so he made up an entire new...
That guy made guitars do things that you never had even heard previous to him doing them. Sounds that there's just crazy.
You can go on YouTube and type in Eruption cover and come up with 1,000 people note for noting Eruption. But you can also go on YouTube and find people who have been playing guitar for 15 years that are like, I still can't figure out how to do this from this, from this one song or whatever. Last night we were listening to Van Halen, and he has there's a part of a solo called Cathedral that sounds like he's made the guitar sound like a violin, and it's a trick that Eddie does with the volume knob. And I was explaining it to people, and everybody in the room was like, "What? Like how would you even think of that? Let alone do it." Another thing that I think is amazing about Eddie is he's part of the social vernacular. Like, you know how people say it's the Cadillac of, or he's the Tiger Woods of? That's Eddie Van Halen is in that discussion. Like, people will say like, oh, well, he's the Eddie Van Halen of, or whatever. Right. It's just he's to get to a point where you're the standard of excellence that people compare. If someone's trying to get across how good you are at something, and someone says you're the Eddie Van Halen of, your job is done here, Edward. You know what I mean? Like, you've made it. And leading up to Edward's passing here, the band was kind of in a state of suspended animation for the past 5 years. They finished up their last tour 5 years and a couple of days to the day of where Eddie passed. Mm-hmm. And their last show was at the Hollywood Bowl, right in L.A. where they started. Right. With Dave. And over the past 5 years, there's been a million rumors of, they're going to tour with Sammy and Dave at the same time, or, they're going to tour with Sammy again, or there's a new guy or whatever. And by all accounts, it really seems like Edward spent the last 5 years kind of guiding Wolfgang through the solo album process. Mm-hmm. And it's come to light in the past few days that he spent a lot of the last year kind of making amends and whatnot, because, I think he knew that although the whole world was stunned by this, the inner circle, the family would have known that this was coming. Yeah. So as of now, one thing that I read the other day is we're never going to hear a Van Halen song played properly live ever again. Yeah. Like, somebody can note for note it, and it's still not going to be the way Edward would do it. So you guys know when these things happen, it's a part of life. It's going to happen. People are going to pass away.
Wait, everyone dies?
I think, everyone does die. And I think for me, this one was just it's the stunning aspect of it. It just came out of nowhere. 65 years is entirely too young for, we've used the phrase on here before, rock star years. 65 is nothing in rock star years. That's still not.
Yeah, it's pretty young.
We really didn't know what way to go with this, and I'm not being funny. You guys really aren't big Van Halen fans, and
I don't hate them.
And I know you. That's the thing is, I can listen to him play the guitar all day long. But, like, as far as just the songs that have been beat into our heads over the years, I just can't.
I would tell you, take an honest listen to OU812 and Ballads. I think that you would like those records a lot, because 5150 has a ton of stuff you already know. Probably the other songs you know real well are probably on For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge right now, Pound Cake, you know, that stuff. Which, by the way, my wife the other day, Pound Cake was on, and it said, it was an old MTV version, so in the corner it said Pound Cake, and my wife was like, the song has a name? I thought it was just called I was like, no. And then I had to explain to her what Pound Cake is about, and she didn't like it anymore.
I probably don't want to know.
It's an innuendo.
Innuendo.
Right. But I would strongly encourage you to check out OU812. OU812, I think you'll be surprised by the diversity on it. And then now Ballads, I'll tell you, is just a straightforward rock record. There's a couple of ballads on it, but the lyrics are real deep. It's lyrics from a guy going through a very messy divorce, openly talking about his feelings going through a very messy divorce.
Like I like 5150, but their first record, I just skip all the songs that I've heard a million times, because I cannot listen to Panama or Jump one more time ever.
You suffer from radioitis with that. It's like when I go to a GNR show and they start Sweet Child of Mine, I'm like, who needs beer? It doesn't. I mean, Sweet Child of Mine's arguably one of the greatest pop rock songs of all time, right? But I still don't want to hear it for the 7,000th time. This is kind of just what I thought would be best, like just to talk about the history of the band, and
I learned so many things.
Give you guys next week. There's a quiz.
Shit.
So you may want to listen to this episode. But I could go on about there'll never be another, and he was so unique. But anybody who's listening to this knows all those things. One thing that I do want to mention is in the press over the years there have been various stories about when the breakups were messy and whatnot. But by all accounts, Ed was just a good guy too. Like he just was a good dude. One of the funniest things for me that would show you what a cool guy he must have been in real life is, and I don't know if either of you know the story. Do you know about the fan that asked him to take the picture at the Tool concert? This was probably about this time last year. His son, Wolfgang, posted this on Instagram, and it's this guy at a Tool concert. Eddie and Wolfgang were just in the crowd. And this guy at a Tool concert handed his camera to Edward Van Halen to take a picture of him.
What?
At the show. And it wasn't like, oh my God, it's Edward Van Halen. Like, he was just like, hey guy, will you, So Wolfgang stood behind Edward and took a picture of Edward taking the picture of the thing. And he was like, he put it on his Instagram, and he was like, boy, this guy's going to be real mad tomorrow when the whole world tells him, And so, but like, first of all, Edward Van Halen is just in the crowd at a Tool show, right? And then on top of that, now, do you know who I am? He's just okay and takes this guy's picture for him, And I just love that Wolfgang had the forethought to be like, oh man. And so, as you might imagine, the whole world caved this poor guy's head in. Everybody was like, how in the hell do you ask Edward Van Halen to, So
that's awesome.
I would imagine this week his Facebook went nuts again. Once the news broke, everybody was like, oh, hey, your picture taker passed away. And so that poor guy. But I just think it's funny. To me, that says so much that he was just in the general crowd in the first place, and then took the picture, and didn't do the whole, do you have any idea who I am? Because Dave would have been like, I will tell you something, man. David Lee Roth is the picture, Just wait a minute.
He would have squealed a couple times too.
Yeah. When I show you clips in a minute, you're going to be like, that was a stunningly good David Lee Roth impression.
Oh God!
So I think for these things, this is going to keep happening. We're obviously, because of the nature of things, we're going to lose people like this. I think this one just kind of stunned me out of nowhere. Yesterday was like the first time that I really was like, I think I was literally in shock all week. And yesterday I was watching clips of him, and I was like, holy crap, that guy actually passed away. Yeah. And having seen him in concert 8 times, when you do those things, you feel more close to the artist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just last night, I was trying to tally up the shows that I'd been to, and out of nowhere, I remembered that in 2012, I saw Van Halen on Monday, and then I went and saw GNR on Tuesday, and then I went and saw Van Halen again on Wednesday. And I just literally remembered that last night. I was like, wait a minute, I saw him twice. So it was, went from 6 to 8.
And see, he's one of those. He's one of the things in music that when they're not around anymore, stuff's not the same anymore.
Right.
So it's like they can replace singers all day long, but you can't replace him playing guitar the way he does.
Yeah.
You can't.
And like I say,
you can't.
We can bring up 1,000 people note for noting eruption, but it's not the same.
It is. Yeah, it's not.
And I think I would challenge anybody listening to this or listening to Van Halen this week. Get your Ed on. Start breaking the rules. Start look what happened when Edward Van Halen broke the rules. Not you, Michelle. I know
I'm a rule follower.
You are absolutely a rule follower. But who knows what you could have done with a guitar?
What do you mean could have?
Or your flute playing.
Yeah, it would have been the flute.
Yeah. I could have been the first hard rock flute player.
You could be touring with Kenny G right now.
Yes,
shut up.
Absolutely.
You could be a 2-piece. His sax and your
like 2
flute.
chains.
Right, yes, absolutely. So to wrap things up, I want to say that I made mention earlier. We have a lot of things scheduled to be coming up.
We're
pretty
so
soon.
busy.
We mentioned recently that Brian Elmquist from the Lone Bellow has a side project out called Joy Club. We are going to be having Brian, at least, and possibly Justin on from Joy Club very soon. We have a special coming up where we're going to discuss pretty much the history of and influence of Tom Petty, and we have a special guest for that. I mentioned earlier the directors of the documentary Vinyl Nation got a hold of us. If you haven't watched Vinyl Nation yet, just Google Vinyl Nation documentary. It is absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to talk to the guys. They want to do the whole episode with us, which is going to be great. So we say this all the time, and I can't stress it enough. Without the music of Van Halen, life would be a mistake for everybody except for Michelle.
Bye.
Bye.
That was the most awkward
whoopsies.
Podcast is hosted by Russ Robinson, Kyle Wimple, and Michelle Koselecki. Produced and edited by Russ Robinson. Intro and outro music composed by Chris Kimmel. Opening credits read by Stacey Robinson. Recorded with a Rode Podcaster Pro and Rode Pod mics.